A very useful win for Tipperary here at Semple Stadium, 219 to 20 points against Galway. And actually Tipperary put themselves in a great position in the first half and looked very much like they were going to cruise home to victory. But Galway got the final five scores of the first half. They got the first two of the second half and really could have kicked on and won the game. But it's actually very hard to really measure where the two teams are at after this, because there were so many wides and the errant shooting, and it was kind of frustrating to watch at times. Like, there was over 80 shots in the game, and just over half of them went over the bar. So that sucked any atmosphere. Well, there wasn't much of an atmosphere obviously at Semple Stadium because there's no one here, but the flow of the game, it kind of killed the momentum somewhat. But you could definitely trace Tipperary's victory to the last quarter of the game, winning that by 8 points to 4, including the final four scores after an Evan Nyland free had brought it back to just a difference of one. And Michael Breen was very important with that. He won a couple of really good balls. He won one just here around the 45 on this on the side that we're on here. He snapped a nice ball, turned and knocked it over the bar. Then Ronan Maher knocked one over, and then Michael Breen caught a puck out, turned and drove the ball over the bar. And when Tipperary were looking like they were struggling to get ball winners in the forward line during that second half, it was the likes of Breen who came in and did it. It's just getting that consistency, and if he can consistently do that, that would be very important for Tipperary, who, it kind of started with likes of Dylan Quirk and John McGrath in the forward line. The two of them came off. Bubbles O'Dwyer knocked over 3 points. He did quite well. Paddy Cadell, I thought, was a very, very strong performer in the first half. Petered out a little bit along with Alan Flynn, and both of those guys were taken off. The big news for Tipperary coming into the game is that Bonner Maher is out for the season. He hurt his Achilles, and obviously a devastating blow for him. Brian Hogan was due to start in goals, but I think he picked up a shoulder knock, so instead his cousin Barry played in goals, and again gave a decent performance and got a clean sheet. For Galway, Joe Canning played midfield. Thought he did quite well. Knocked over his frees very well. Got a couple of scoring chances and knocked them over from play as well. And had a couple of wides, but of the options for Galway out the middle of the field, he certainly put his hand up there. Cathal Mannion came on late on. He's obviously been used a little bit more sparingly after a good run out against Limerick last week. He did fine when he came in. And Darren Morrissey, I thought, did fairly well in the back line. He was eventually taken off. TJ Brennan did okay. A couple of guys who did okay. Dahi Burke he's just back in the team. He looked a small bit ropey at times, but again, you wouldn't be all that worried about him. No doubt he'll get up to his usual level of form. Kevin Cooney, who's a brother of Joseph Cooney, he played in the full forward line and roamed out and was further out the field in the second half at times. Did some okay things, didn't entirely go his way. Just for Tipperary, I mentioned Paddy Cadell. He's used to the ball in the first half, really, really good. Barry Heffernan is very much becoming along with Ronan Maher and maybe Cathal Bard, who got man of the match with TG Cahir, the star turn in the back line. Heffernan, for the majority of the game, blotted out Conor Whelan, who has been such a thorn in the side of Tipperary in the last couple of years. And if you're going to come into a game like this, and if it's got that challenge match vibe at times, and it really doesn't feel like a whole pile is on the line here in the league this year, especially with it being so condensed and all. When you've seen a matchup like that and you see that maybe that will work for Tipperary, and it doesn't matter if it's in the full back line, the half back line, wherever it's going to be. Like Conor Whelan is such a difficult player to stop. Tipperary will now feel that we've got a guy for him. Whether it works out the next day is another thing, because Whelan is such a good player. He might find the answers. But I mentioned a couple of other things. Paddy Maher played full back. Did okay at times, never completely turned or anything like that, but gave away a couple of frees and had a couple of spills and turnovers. So I think Tipperary still, it's pretty clear that Liam Sheedy is fancying Paddy Maher to do a job back there, and perhaps he will do it. But if there's a pacey guy going in and you're left exposed, that's going to be a tough job for any player, especially when you're a little bit older. But he did some good things too. Cathal Bard, really good performance, but the one thing is probably carried the ball into contact a little bit too much unnecessarily. Like, for all the brilliant things he does, and he's such a tiger at times, especially in the first half here, I think around 30 yards out, he carried the ball into contact going past Joe Canning and ended up slipping and spilling, and Galway got a turnover score. And that's something that probably is the only downside of his game at the moment, because he's such a good player. A couple of the younger guys that played for Tipperary, I said Goodell did okay, faded out a little bit. Robert Byrne did okay, and Sheedy gave him the full game, so he obviously likes what he saw there. Dylan Quirk had a very quiet first half, didn't go overly well for him. Again, Tipperary looking to make sure they don't leave their back line completely isolated. You could see Seamus Kennedy holding position at centre back, Ronan Maher doing the same, and of course Galway. The spine of their team was something that stood out to me. Like, I didn't think Galway were overly impressive to watch in this game, certainly not compared with Limerick a week ago, and maybe it's hard to rouse themselves again 2 weeks running because they were so good in that game. But if you look at the spine of the team, Dahi Burke again did some good things, not his greatest game. Pádraig Mannion, Tipperary managed to avoid him a nice bit. Midfield, Johnny Cohen very quiet first half, but Canning did quite well. Jason Flynn named 11, but different guys played centre forward, and Kevin Cooley named at 14. But Brian Concannon, and he was out around the half forward line, thought he was really good, got a few scores, won a few turnovers. But like, the spine of their team certainly didn't dominate. Now, that's not to say that Tipperary's did either, but Tipperary created a little bit more, especially in the sort of goal scoring exchanges. That goal that Jason Ford scored in the first half was very, very nice one indeed. Potentially, it seemed to me at the time that he might have played Dahi Burke's hurley from the puck out. Ball breaks, Noel McGrath, beautiful little reverse hand pass, and Jason Ford finished it very well. Then of course there was the other goal that came on the half hour. Noel McGrath, nice little pass from Jason Ford, and away he went. So like, Tipperary had the goal scoring threat that they probably haven't had in the last couple of games, using the ball a nice bit better. So definitely Galway ran the bench in the second half, and I suppose after getting a couple of wins already, it didn't overly concern them whether they completely saw this game out or not, and got the win. Now they definitely didn't play like a team that was full value for their win, but still they would have got plenty positives out of this as well. A couple of the lads in the backs putting their hands up with decent performances, and both teams will march on. But Tipperary with the winners, 219 to 20 points. I'd be very curious to get your thoughts on it here.